I want to really give you some basis of the teaching of Buddha. In fact, as you know, you see, teaching of Buddha, Tingul Khyentse Rinpoche always used to say, teaching of Buddha is vast and profound. Sabji Jachewa in Tibet. Vast is like, you know, if you look into the word of the Buddha, just the word of Buddha, Sangyeka, you know, it's 108 volumes. Kangyur. Not to talk about the work of the great Indian master, which are over 200 volumes. So if you were to have, you know, in a hotel, you know, in the West, you always have a Bible there, isn't it? So if you try to have a Buddhist Bible, the whole half room will be filled up. In fact, often, even the many monasteries, the small monasteries, have not have this entire word of the Buddha. Anyway, so it's very vast. You see, so that the vast way is the way of the Pandit and the learned. Whereas what's wonderful for us is it's vast but also profound. The profound path of the yogi. So in this respect, I'm not going to talk about the vast way, so you don't worry, okay? That when Buddha was asked, what is the essence of teachings? What's amazing about teaching Buddha, it can be so vast, but also it can be summed up into just 3 points or 4 lines. And Buddha said, when he was asked, what is the essence of teaching, he said, Dikpa chum mejashi gewa pusun sobache, rang semne yonsundu dun sangetem bai. You understand? That, when you translate into English, is commit not a single unwholesome action. Dikpa chum mejashi, commit not a single unwholesome action. Gewa pusun sobache means cultivate a wealth of virtue. Rang semne yonsundu is to tame, to conquer, to transform this mind of ours. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. In fact, Kyabje Tingul Khyentse Rinpoche used to say that a very learned master can enumerate from these 3 lines the 100th volume of the word of Buddha. Whereas also that these 3 lines embody the basic teachings of what's called 3 yanas or tekpasum. The commit not a single unwholesome action is the basic vehicle. In fact, when you talk about first turning of the wheel of the Dharma by Buddha at Saranat, when he taught him the 4 Noble Truths, is embodied in the first line. And the second is at the Rajagir, at the Valchapik mountain, when we taught on the present paramita. That is embodied, you can say roughly, in the second line, cultivate the wealth of virtue. And the last, then in many unknown places, Buddha taught the secret mantra Vajrayana, that is important the last. In fact, also to put it very simply, you know these 3 things, the basic vehicle, the Mahayana or Bodhisattva vehicle, or Tekpa Chenpo, and then the Sangha Doji Tekpa or secret mantra Vajrayana. Actually, if you put it very simply, it's peace, essence of that is peace, compassion, and wisdom. So if I say a little bit, when you say commit not a single unwholesome action, we might say, but how can I possibly not commit a single unwholesome action? What it really means, when the masters really explain to you, say that what it really means is, as much as possible, abandon all the unwholesome, negative, and harmful actions of the body, speech, and mind, because that is the cause of suffering for yourself and others. Clear? And then second line, cultivate the wealth of virtue means, as much as possible, adopt all the positive, wholesome, and beneficial actions of the body, speech, mind, which are cause of the happiness for yourself and others. As the great master Shantideva, Shivala, Papa Shivala said, all the happiness there is in this world comes from thinking of others. All the suffering there is in this world comes from thinking of oneself alone. So unfortunately, you see, I mean, if you put it very simply, you see, if you want to say, well, if you don't want suffering, because you see, everything in this world doesn't come by mere chance. There's always cause and effect. Nothing comes by chance. So therefore, if you do not want suffering, then you must abandon the cause of that suffering which is ignorance, of course, based in ignorance, but negative emotions or destructive emotions and negative action or negative karma, that result in suffering. So if you abandon the cause, then you'll be able to overcome. Is that clear? And whereas if you want happiness, well, it's up to you. You must develop wisdom instead of ignorance, through knowledge, and develop wisdom, knowledge, and to actually engage in positive actions such as love, compassion, and so on. And then engage in positive, beneficial, and virtuous actions, which will be the cause of happiness for yourself and others. But unfortunately, because of ignorance, you see, beings, you see, even they want happiness, they go for suffering. It's kind of almost ridiculous. It's an irony almost. As the great Shantideva, Papa Shivala said, beings of, you see, of samsara, kowa la yepe, you know, of us all, what we do is though longing to be happy in their ignorance, they destroy, you see, the happiness as if it was the worst enemy. Though they wish to get rid of suffering, yet they rush headlong towards it. Atama. Is that clear? So therefore, now if you go through the one very simply, you know, just very simply, because I don't want to go make it complicated, make it very simple, something you can remember. You see, the first thing, commit not a single unwholesome action, basically means don't harm others. Clear? Because if you harm others, it harms you. In fact, what's amazing is if you help others, it helps you. So that's why His Holiness Dalai Lama often used to say, if you want to be selfish, he said, don't be foolishly selfish, be wisely selfish. What is being wisely selfish is that if you really want to think of yourself, your own well-being, if you want to really think of yourself, then use your intelligence and see what's good for you and what's not good for you. That is to say, if you harm others, it's not good for you. It harms you. It comes back. If you help others, then it really, you know, that's what is really beneficial for you. Is that clear? That's why all the great lamas always say, you know, if you cannot help, at least don't harm. Never majes, don't harm. And most important thing is don't keep malice and hatred in your heart. Don't keep a black heart. That's why you see the most important thing is develop good heart. That's why the great master Atisha Dipankara, when he came to Tibet, you know, it was very famous. Whenever he meet people, he doesn't say, "Oh, how are you? How's your family? How's your dog? How's your cat?" No, but rather he would ask, "How is your good heart today? How's your good heart today?" Because most important thing is good heart. It said, "Samba zana sadam lamyonzan sambangena sadam lang." If your heart and mind are good, then your path and fruition will be so. If your heart or mind are evil, your path and fruition will also be similar. So the most important thing is, you see, don't harm others. Remember, when you're about to harm others, you know, remember, it will come back to you. In fact, that is the essence of refuge. When you take refuge, the basic principle, or rather having taken refuge, the basic, what is called precept, damba, is not harming others, refraining from harm. That's why basic vehicle is really always about not harming others, refraining from harm, and therefore peace. Clear? Then next is, of course, on the other hand, you should cultivate the wealth of virtue, which is engaging in the positive, you see, beneficial acts, which is engaging in the loving kindness, compassion, very much. That is the source of happiness. In fact, it's very interesting. If you were to say, what is, now you have to think of all the Buddhists, not just the Mahayana or the Vajrayana. If you think of the whole the Buddhist, you see, world, globally, and think of all the three yanas, what is the basic Buddhist philosophy? What is a fundamental Buddhist philosophy? Now, philosophy is when you don't practice, you call it philosophy. When you practice, it's called tawa, the view, the perspective, the principle with which you're guided. Okay, what is the basic Buddhist philosophy or view? Is interdependence. Let us say, if you look into everything is interdependent. Like, for example, you see, if you harm others, it harms you. If you help others, it helps you. First, you do it just from your own, you see, self-interest, but enlightened self-interest. You realize that harming harms you, helping helps you. But then after a while, you see, you realize, harming harms you, helping helps you. Then you realize, actually, your happiness and suffering is dependent upon others. Our happiness, suffering is interconnected. We are all interdependent. Is that clear? So when you realize that, it inspires altruism. Altruism comes from realizing that how everything is interdependent. In fact, interdependent, when you realize fully, it's called shunyata or tongbani. Is that? But also, if you really look, like if those of you read the Tibetan Book of Living Dying, the first few chapters, particularly the third chapter, deals with this very much. Because when you look into life, you see, one of the basic things is everything is impermanent. Everything is impermanent. Impermanent shows how everything is interdependent. Is that clear? Everything is impermanent. You know? Why everything is impermanent is because it's interdependent. Because if it's independent and solid and permanent, then it never decay. Like sometimes you go to hotels in India. 1 year you go, it's really new, fresh. Next year, it's completely gone. That's impermanence. That's everywhere. So it's impermanent. In fact, what the modern science has shown, really, for example, when you look at, you see, all this, everything is, you see, changes, very subtle changes happening constantly. We don't perceive it. It's constantly. There are, of course, more visible changes, more, you see, prominent changes, but actual subtle, fundamental changes happening all the time. That's why you see what the modern physics have realized, that there's, when you break down matter, we normally feel the smallest existing, the particle or the last remaining or the, matter is atom. But then they realize even that does not exist. It's just merely a field of energy. Which shows what's interesting is what Buddha realized 2,500 years ago is being realized by the quantum physics now. That is actually in chapter 3, if you want to look at it. And so everything is impermanent, but also then everything is impermanent, but then how do things exist? Because it's interdependent, because of cause and condition together. So impermanence, interdependence, which also shows that, you see, shows that what we do or say or think have consequences. We are powerful, particular motivation. And motivation, you say mind is very powerful, motivation. It is said it's not the size of act that matters, but it's the motivation behind it. So therefore, you see, because things are interdependent, because things are impermanent, therefore, whatever we say or do have really impact. In fact, there's a sometimes saying, even a movement of a little finger affects the whole solar system. But our actions are very powerful. Our thoughts are very powerful. Interesting people who have died in a car accident or an operation theater and have returned. You see, they have remarked, this is in chapter 20, they have said that actually they say not even a single thought is lost. So therefore, really, we have to be responsible, both for ourselves and for the world. Is that clear? And then also, what is interesting is that you see this view of interdependence is not just a Buddhist philosophy. It's also very useful in our everyday life, in dealing with our emotions, dealing with others, dealing in the world. For example, when you get angry, really angry and you just start blaming somebody, somebody, and you blame, you get angry, you get angry, somebody harmed you, get angry, then your anger grows, because you have a target, and you blame that person. You go on, then you go like insane sometimes, You can go red, like a demon. When you become jealous, you go green. When you're miserly, you go yellow. Anyway, so what I'm saying is that very much, you see, that when you're angry, you see, if you do like that, that's very easy. We always do that. We just simply, get carried away by emotions and that. But if you really say, hey, look, hang on, wait a moment, let's examine, let's see. Okay, and you should really look and examine, you see that actually there are many, many causes and conditions. It's not a simple story. Many, many causes and conditions in which you are also implicated quite greatly. When you realize that, then you see the target, the original target on which you're getting angry kind of like dissolves. It becomes a little bit ridiculous. The anger itself is helped to diminish. Because you see, it's very interesting in Buddhism. It's not just about heart and about devotion only, but there's a very strong development of our intelligence, a very strong cognitive component. Even when you talk about compassion, it's compassion, which I'll present tomorrow. Compassion is two things, empathy and reason together. So that, you see, if you reason, that's what called lojong, training of the mind. When you reason, when you look deeply, because sometimes we see we don't reason, we just go a bit crazy. We go a bit insane, Sometimes you see, I remember the great masters used to say, do not sacrifice your long-term happiness with short-term pleasure. Like you're angry, and you're so angry, you take out the knife and you stab the person. Okay. That moment, you get some gratification, but then you end up maybe in a prison for many, many years. Reason. We human beings, we're power of reason and judgment. Judgment, I don't mean being judgmental, always, judging, he's like this, he's like that. Not that judgment. That's not good at all. Particularly in a small community that happens, That's very poisonous. Particularly if you have democracy. Sometimes you see when you hear stories of people said this, and just you don't examine. We just simply believe in, make stories. And really, I've heard also people who are there, when I did not know them, I think they're kind of like a demon or they're something. But when you come to know them, they're the most wonderful person. So don't just judge. If you judge, you'll be judged. Even Christ says, if you judge others, you shall be judged by the same measure. So don't judge others. Don't really give the benefit of doubt. That's in the law, isn't it? Benefit of doubt, very much. Very much. Benefit of doubt. And really come. And also interesting, when you do something bad, when you do something wrong, if you really have self-respect, you can confess. Because you know that you are good, but your actions are bad. You separate your action from you. Because what happens, trouble with is, we always do something bad, think something bad, and we completely identify with that. We think ourselves bad. That's very stupid. And that we always do that, unfortunately. Because we are good. In fact, from the Buddhist point of view, the fundamental Buddhist teachings show, this is the fundamental principle, that we all have Buddha nature. We all have the potential of enlightenment. Just like the Buddha. Buddha was just an ordinary being like one of us, who through his own effort, through purification, through accumulating merit, attained and that's why his life is a great example. And also look at the life of the great masters such as Milarepa and others. We call them Namtar. Namtar means, Namba Tarva, is life and liberation, how they became free. Story of liberation is Namtar. Namtar means story of liberation. Is that clear? The life of masters is very, very inspiring. I remember the Dalai Lama used to say, when he was really in the late 60s, when we just came as refugees from Tibet, situation was really, really, really terrible. It was very difficult. We had no friends whatsoever. I mean, just now, because everybody wants to be Dalai Lama's friend. I mean, they're all just queuing up. But there was no Dalai. So so much difficulty, so much difficulty. In those days, he used to read the life of great masters, life of great masters. When you read them and when you see what they went through, then he says, it's so little what I'm going through. He said, it gives me courage. So particularly practitioners, when you do Chunyamne, you should look at the life of great masters. That is Milarepa, the sacrifice they made. Also, one image of Buddha that is very inspiring is when he was at Naranjana doing the austerity practice. His body is emaciated. That's like for Dalai Lama, that's the more inspiring image of Buddha than the one that's golden image and sitting gloriously, because that's a really great example. Anyway, that image of Buddha goes back to where? Huh? Buddha nature, that's right. Because Dekhe Jimbu we have. That's why when you dedicate Sunam di Tamche Zikpani. That means through this merit may all beings attain the omni state of enlightenment, conquer the enemies of fault and delusion. May they all be liberated from the ocean of suffering, from the pounding waves of birth, old and sickness and death. We all have the potential of enlightenment, the Buddha nature. Now where is Buddha nature? In the nature of a mind. That's why when you talk about nature of mind, I will explain a little bit, try to explain where the Buddha nature is. Is that clear? So because they were fundamentally good. That's why sometimes in the Dzogchen teachings, the two great teachings, Dzogchen and Mahamudra. The great teachings, these two. And in the Dzogchen teachings, the Pramodju Buddha, the first Buddha, or the Pramodju Buddha, is called Samandabhadra, or Kuntu Zambo. Kuntu Zambo, Kuntu means always, Zambo means well. Actually, really depict the fundamental goodness that's inherent in all of us is Kuntu Zambo. Kuntu Zambo is not outside. Kuntu Zambo is within you. As Nujin Rinpoche used to say, actually when Buddha became enlightened, Buddha Shakyamuni became enlightened in Buddha Gaya at Vajrasana, Dorje, it's only his outer display of his enlightenment. But the real his ultimate enlightenment is he became enlightened in your mind, in my mind. In fact, if you know, all the Buddhas are within us. Sometimes we can have temples, we don't need temples also. Buddha's all there. Our body is the temple. So anyway, what I'm trying to really share a little bit from here, just give you a little bit taste of how extraordinarily rich the Dharma is and how exciting it is for the young people. It's fun. It's really fun. It's really fun. For example, Dalai Lama, his really pleasure is hot water and studying scripture. Reading, practicing. Is that clear? It's amazing. So we have this fundamental goodness, you see goodness in all of us, which we must really, when we come to recognize and honor that, then we become true to ourselves. In fact, when we become closer and closer to a true nature, then we find really happiness and contentment and we come home.